Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another episode of Planeswalking the Professors. This week is the first of 3 official Conflux spoiler weeks, but as of today there are 82 cards on the unofficial Conflux spoiler, and we have them ready to be dished out. So let's draw. In white, very much dissimilar from last week, we see 0 constructed playable cards, but we do see 3 small cards with little limited niches, being Court Homunculus, Darklit Gargoyle, and Valiant Guard. Court Homunculus should be a fun card to fit into a limited Esper deck, especially being the only 1-mana artifact that we'll be seeing in a Shard Conflux draft. Also, it seems like Wizards is doing quite a bit more with having creatures like Kragpuka that get a handy power and toughness swap or a small boost that forces players to look at spending just that 1 extra mana to do a neat trick. Finally is Valiant Guard. Personally, I would have preferred if this guy could have been a 0-2 with Exalted, but for reprint purposes, and Wizards' new theme of keeping Magic complex enough that it always has new themes, mechanics, and ideas for older players to build around, but has to have the simplicity, particularly in core sets, despite being the newest set only 1/8 of the time, so that the new players can buy core sets and successfully use them in various combinations of decks later on. For example, why reprint Grizzly Bears when you can reprint Cillian Elf? It may not seem advantageous at first, but think of it this way. Cillian Elf costs 1 and a green, as does Grizzly Bears. Cillian Elf is a vanilla 2/2, as is Grizzly Bears. However, Cillian Elf is not just a functional reprint of Grizzly Bears for the major fact that it is an elf, while Grizzly Bears is, well, a bear. Think of it this way. In Magic, there are over 50 cards that specifically reference or have a direct non-self interaction with a creature type elf. How many cards in Magic reference a non-self interaction with the creature type bear? 0. Additionally, I expect Valiant Guard to take the place of Wall of Wood, being that A, it isn't a defender, which, while that never really mattered before, being a white soldier instead may play a part for the fact that it doesn't have defender. Who knows? Maybe playing a 3rd turn Field Marshal and swinging for an extra point might matter. In blue, we see nothing more than a few limited stones that, while they'll add nicely, won't affect constructed much. First is Brackwater Elemental. Sure, it's a 1-shot 4/4 for 3 at first, but first of all, you can unearth it on a turn when you've had, in limited, a Grixis deck, the ability to remove their creatures or when they're foolishly, mysteriously tapped out. And secondly, for the fact that it's a common rarity and can easily be put into your deck, much like Court Homunculus when playables are running low. From the Esper chart, it would appear as if this runs the same way with the, once again, very fantastically yet simplistically designed scornful question mark their Lich that forces you to think 1 step prior due to vigilance and fear needing to come into effect before any major or minor combat tricks or any tapping is done. And secondly from Esper is Parasitic Strix. In what seems to be a cycle of creatures that come into play and do something according to if you control a permanent of a different color, and while this seems majorly Shadowmoor-like, I do like this card. Partially for the fact that it's a 2/2 artifact flyer to begin with, but also because it has that little extra utility and provides for that extra option that just makes Magic simplistically complex. Once again, we see those little mana triggers in Dreadwing. These cards are much like the 2 colorless color 2/2s with pay, Wooburg, do something kinda cool but not worth 5 mana, except that I expect that these cards to play out considerably faster and considerably more effective in Limited. However, one of the first limited bombs we're seeing now is Extractor Demon. A 5/5 flyer with Unearth seems pretty limited worthy already, but you then add in the fact that you can flavorfully mill yourself and start unearthing all sorts of stuff, or start milling your opponent for the win, and that makes the card, well, not much that more exciting, especially considering you need only to swing in with this guy 4 times to get the win, and in that time we'll mill a maximum of 6 cards prior to winning and 4 cards that will be possibly effective, and the chances of you flipping an unearthed card, even if you've drafted the Uber Unearthed deck, is about 1 in 6. On to red, we see what I expect to be a crossover card for Blightning Beatdown, Jund Mana Ramp, a future Grixis deck, if we had ever thought, or currently think that's possible, and an Absolute Blast in Limited. Sure, the 2 damage can be nice, but destroying any creature if you control a black permanent, Bitter Blossom just got that much better. Wow. Here's a limited bomb that does something actually useful for every color of the rainbow. World Heart Phoenix. Sure, a 2/2 flyer for 4 isn't that exciting, but a recurring card that can get some crazy card advantage and can start recurring as early as 5th turn and is a 4/4 flyer to boot seems just fine to me. In green is a card that's easily constructed playable. And unfortunately, it's mythic rare. Thornling is not legendary. Thornling is not dorkishly high or absurdly costed. Thornling is constructed playable. We all knew Wizards had the potential to screw something like this up, and while they had managed to keep cards as mythic, they were so obviously the pre-designated crap, we see Thornling. If this card really does get up there in the top tables, you can expect to hit the $50 mark, and so we can only hope this is the pre-release card. In multicolor, we look not at the simply retardedly costed Progenitus, or what might hope to be the new hype, but at 8 mana is not in fact the better than Cruel Ultimatum, Nicol Bolas, but at a single card, for which I expect we'll see new Naya Acceleration decks coming out of the woodworks, Megalanoth. Sure, it's 6 mana, but that's what these decks were meant to do. Get 6 mana, then bring out a 6/6 Trampler with Vigilance to boot, and the ability to, assuming your opponent has anything that can swing for 6, go out with a bang and hit your opponent for 6. And, well, that's all for today, folks. So until next time, this is the Card Professor, tapped out for now, but we'll be back soon. Wait. We've got some extra special news for this week. Yesterday, we were contacted by Jessica Sheets saying that for the first time since we spoiled Firespout and Shadowmoor, we'll get to spoil a card. This card is Scarland Thrynax. Immediately, I'm sure you'll be able to guess that it's a lizard, and I'll even throw you the mana cost, rarity, and flavor text. This card makes me believe that it will have 2 small niches in limited and standard, much as all podcasts do around the net, such as Planeswalking the Professors does. For limited, let's begin by comparing it to Thornthrash Viashano. Okay. Fine, you'll need the power and toughness to judge this card in accordance to Thornthrash Viashano. It's a 2/2. 2/2, you question? A 2/2 for 3 different colors of the rainbow and uncommon rarity? Lame. Well, take a look at Thornthrash Viashano's Devour ability. This card has been a great combo with Dragon Fodder as it shows the flavor in Jund in which the weak are fed to the strong until the strong are the weak. This functions this way in the Devour keyword, but also in slightly more hidden ways. For example, in Shards of Alara we see that Esper has the simplistic characteristic having simple artifact abilities, but they could do anything from returning artifacts from your graveyard to your hand, a power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control, or even seemingly unnecessary reduction of cost of artifacts. Then, with the current Conflux spoiler, we see cards like Scornful Question Mark, their Lich, and Darklit Gargoyle that show the more flavorful aspect of filigree, which, if you didn't notice, was actually being done in shards. In this particular case, Master of Ethereum is based on a shared amount, or contributing aura of filigree. Ethereum Sculptor represents stretching Ethereum thin, and Sanctum Gargoyle represents the salvaging of Ethereum. However, in Conflux we get more specific with specifically the different twists and adaptations to the changing world around them in Esper. In a flavorful aspect, Scarland Thrynax works this same way, with something like the Devour creatures with come into play abilities, but in this case instead applies to this creature being already in play. So what is that ability? Well, here it is. This card will certainly see synergy in Limited with the ability to sacrifice creatures in response with cards such as Necrogenesis or with small creatures that can assist your Gariel, Drake, or Rockslide Elemental. In Standard, though, while we have newfound cards for Jund Mana Ramp, I do believe this card will fit into a certain version of its build. Will it fit into the fast ramp version that just wants to play your 4 and up spells, get out your birds, and finish with your Broodmage Dragon? No. However, with the necessity to chump block with the early game with Jund Mana Ramp decks that run Bitter Blossom and Goblin Assault, and want to launch that Banefire for 10, I am confident you'll see this guy somewhere.
The Proffessors is brought to you by TrollandToad.com, MTGMintCard.com, CardHorder.com, and Jiffy's Photo and Baseball Cards. Shards of Alara is here and known, and it looks extremely tasty, so have your mouse on the order button at TrollandToad.com, MTGMintCard.com, and CardHorder.com, or support the show and head on down to Jiffy's Photo and Baseball Cards today.